Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the sixth and final Club Support Hub webinar for 2021. I can't believe that we're already talking about Christmas. We've got decorations in the shops, we've got Christmas carols being sung, and it's not even Halloween yet. Nevertheless, by now, some of you are going to be really familiar with the platform we've been using for these sessions, which is Zoho Showtime. Feel free to introduce yourselves using the chat box on the left-hand side. Share any success stories in relation to diversifying participation at your club or anything else that you'd like to put to other attendees or to our presenters tonight. Also, as we progress through the session, you can ask any questions that come to mind using the questions box. Don't feel that you have to wait until the end of the session. You can go ahead and ask questions at any time. We'll collate those. Courtney, who is our back of house master, will be monitoring those, and we'll be leaving time at the end of the session to cover the questions that get asked. So certainly feel free to pop those in. If we've got time, we might also provide an opportunity for people who would like to do so to request mic access, and you can ask some questions verbally as well. But don't feel as though you have to wait until the end of the session for questions. Resources that are being shared by tonight's presenters, who I'll introduce very shortly, can be found under the Handouts tab on the left-hand side of your screen, and we'll be running a few polls this evening, so be ready with your little trigger fingers to answer those polls. I would like to now welcome our three presenters for this evening, namely Zachary Bourne from Football Australia, who'll be running us through the latest info relating to the MiniRoos kickoff program. G'day, Zach. How you doing?
Good, thanks, Steve. Pleasure to be here.
Good on you. Also joining us is Kate Lawson from Football Queensland, who will be talking us through the women and girls social football programs that are up and coming. G'day, Kate. We saw you say, hey, you're still muted, but it's okay. We'll hear your voice very soon.
Hey, how you going? Sorry.
Hey, hello again.
We'll get there.
Very good. And finally, Alan Templeton, who will walk us through Football Queensland's walking football programs. G'day, Alan.
Hi, Steve. Great to be here.
Good on you. It may not be my last walking pun for the evening either.
I'm sure.
So before we get things formally rolling, pardon me, I'll formally acknowledge the traditional owners of all the country where we walk, work and live, and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. So tonight closes out the Football Queensland Club Support Hub webinar series for this year, which has explored a whole range of really exciting topics. Well, really exciting for us nerds here at CPR Group, and hopefully for many of you too. Firstly, we enjoyed talking through some foundation governance principles and what it takes to be a great club committee, including the basics of incorporation, given that most of the football clubs in the state are incorporated associations, the constitutions under which they operate, and club structure, through to running better meetings. We then moved on to some step-by-step guidance for running a successful, compliant AGM, and this included sharing some valuable resources. Of course, I'm going to say they're valuable because we pulled them together. So if you missed this session, I strongly suggest that you head over to the page listed at the bottom of your screen there and watch the video and download those resources. We've had a lot of clubs contact us since that session to clarify some points in relation to running their AGM, because as some of you are going to be well aware, this can be a real cause of angst in some years. Your season's over, you're all exhausted, and then you've got to, get your financials sorted and run this statutory meeting by the book. And heaven forbid, you might even have some members making themselves a little bit difficult. So the next session, then we started talking about the really fun stuff, money, and focusing on the fact that your clubs are businesses. So we'll come back to that point very shortly. But largely, we discussed the importance of all of your committee or all of your board members having a really good grasp on club accounts, financial reports, budgets, auditing processes, risk management, legal obligations, not just your treasurer. Next up was the really sexy topic, the one that typically gets lots of people interested, which is grants. While this session covered where to find funding opportunities, how to plan the best projects for grants, and some tips and tricks for preparing a great application, we highlighted the importance of recognising grants as just one consideration of good overall financial management. And we encourage clubs not to look at grants as a panacea to solve all their problems, but rather as a means to get projects done sooner than if they had to fundraise and scrounge over the long term. We also advocate strongly for doing your strategic planning first to identify your priority projects and then looking for suitable grant funding to match, not the other way around, which is typically what a lot of clubs do, like identifying a grant program and saying, "Ooh, money, what can we do with that?" Finally, then, in the fifth session, we welcomed Football Queensland infrastructure partners Felton Industries, Osco Modular, and T2 Electrical and Data, who each presented some exciting content relating to their respective offerings. So tonight, we're hitting the ground running or walking and exploring what's happening on the pitch. Glad to see I got a chuckle out of you, Kate. Thank you. But first, as has been the case throughout this entire webinar series, you're not getting out of this question tonight. And that question is, what does not-for-profit actually mean? Now, the reason that we come back to this question continually in our work with not-for-profit sporting clubs is that this notion is really bloody confusing. Many people in the not-for-profit sporting space, even many board and committee members who've been involved in running their club for decades, still fall into the trap of thinking incorrectly about these three little words. So like our previous session on infrastructure, we're not going to deal with this as a poll tonight. Rather, I'll simply remind you of the one and only correct answer to this question. And often people think that not-for-profit means their club can't make a profit, or some variation of this notion. We've got to start and finish the year with the same amount of money in the bank. We can't have any more than a certain amount of dollars in the bank at any given time. Otherwise, we have to start giving some money away. Not-for-profit does not mean no profit. The only thing that not-for-profit means is that your club cannot distribute profits amongst its members purely by virtue of their membership. In other words, your members are not shareholders and they can't receive a dividend based on club profit. You can pay staff for services rendered. You can think, act, and operate as the business that you are. So sport, as Michael explored in the last session, is big business in Australia. About $13 billion each year goes through sporting business. However, most of this money goes to commercial sport. And we reckon that there's a lot more that can be done to increase the share of this pie for not-for-profit clubs like all of yours. So the world's most successful businesses don't stagnate. They don't rest on their laurels, and they don't keep doing things the same old ways they've always been doing them. Now, I'm guessing some of you are probably reading between the lines here, because some of this stuff happens in football clubs. We get elected, and the easiest thing to do as a new committee or board member is the same thing that your predecessor was doing. And the same thing to do as a collective committee or board is the same thing that the previous committee or board was doing. But successful businesses innovate, and they take account of the world around them, and they adapt to market conditions to remain relevant and successful. So keeping up with what's happening in today's world sometimes feels a little like trying to predict the future. And because I'm a nerd, I would dearly love to be someone who gets paid to try and predict the future. And there are actually people out there, people much smarter than me, mind you, whose job it is to do just this, try and predict the future. Now, these people are not clairvoyants. They're not psychics. They're called futurists. And futurism is actually a really important profession. However, predicting the future is very difficult. Take this picture, for instance. This is an image of a city of the future. Now, for all we know, the artist may have had this as an impression of what a typical city in 2021 might look like. How accurate might they be? Well, I reckon that some things in the image are pretty close. We've got some futuristic buildings around the world. We've got monorails, although this one here hangs under the track rather than running on top of the one that whizzes around SeaWorld. But what about this little flying red and white car? I vividly remember reading picture books as a young kid, imagining a future in which I flew around from place to place in my personal flying car. But in reality, we may not be heading for this particular future, but rather we may be heading for a future of automated traffic networks which operate as an organism. And you may simply book your Uber of the future on your phone, and it'll turn up with no driver and take you to where you're going. And then another automated driverless vehicle will turn up and take your husband or wife to where they're going and your kids to where they're going. And none of you will need to drive your own car. And given that every car is ultimately on the same network, every car knows where every other car is. So when you order your car to take you to work 18 minutes down the road, as soon as you do so, every other car knows exactly when your car is going to hit the motorway and when the cars in front and behind are going to need to create a little space for your car to slot in, and so on. So do we really need to fly? Or could all of these cars that know where each other car is simply be traveling at 150, 200, 300 kilometers per hour? Now, some of you are going to call me crazy, but some futurists quite seriously are telling us that within 20 years at the outside, so probably less than that, we will only have driverless automated cars. Now, for those car enthusiasts amongst us, you're probably going to be a bit disappointed to hear that. Nevertheless, that's what the futurists are telling us. Now, regardless of whether they fly or drive on the road, what is this going to mean for our town planning if we don't all need to own our own car? Now, thinking back to that great Aussie movie, The Castle, some of our households have got far more cars than we can ever use. But if we don't need to own a car, we simply dial in an automated driverless vehicle to pick us up and take us wherever we're going. I know a lot of young people these days who don't even have a license, let alone a car, because it's so much easier and they amortize the cost of getting around from year to year across, daily or weekly Uber trips or one of the other providers. I'm picking on Uber a little bit. There are other rideshare providers that provide greater kickback to their drivers. So I mean not to only promote one provider in this segment. But if we don't need a car, then we don't need a garage. We don't need a car park at work. We don't need a car park at our football club. And I know we're working with several football clubs right now where that is their most pressing issue. Sure, they might share with a school next door or another football club or another sporting club that shares their facility. But what if none of us had our own car? What will this mean for how we design our spaces of sport and recreation and how much land we have available for green space? These are the things that the most successful businesses are thinking about and not intending to think about in 10 years, but they're thinking about it now. So to tie this into what we should be discussing rather than Steve rambling on about exciting futurism, what's happening in the world of football? Participation trends are changing. We're hearing new demographics cry out for participation opportunities. Groups of previously disengaged people who want to get involved in football. And there's a sustained trend away from formalized competition in favor of more social, physical community activity. And more important than any of that, what is your club doing about it? Are you taking account of the world around you to make sure that you remain relevant and successful into the future, just like a successful commercial business should be? I'd now like to hand over to Zach, who will be discussing where it all begins, the MiniRoos kickoff program. Welcome, Zach.
Brilliant. Thanks, Steve. Really appreciate it. Look, before we delve a little deeper into MiniRoos Kickoff as a product and I guess how it can be utilized by you as a club, I'll just provide a little overview as to what the program is all about and what it looks like at this point in time. So as I'm sure many of you are aware and when we refer to MiniRoos or being a MiniRoo, we're identifying those participants that are typically aged between 4 and 11 years of age that are affiliated to at least one of the existing products within that MiniRoos player pathway. For MiniRoos Kickoff, more specifically, it's that introductory format of MiniRoos. I guess what is essentially a softer entry point where more of that emphasis and focus is on the participants having lots of fun and engaging in that safe and inclusive environment. The environment we are ideally then creating introduces disguised learning elements that incorporates aspects of things like physical literacy, our gross motor movements, and there's a whole social aspect, obviously, as well, as part of being with teammates and as part of being that team. The disguised learning components are pivotal, obviously, to achieving those desired outcomes, not only for the participants, but for your coaches and I guess for the club as a whole. And they are common throughout the key characteristics, I guess, of what a MiniRoos kickoff program is. So things like maximizing the participants' time with the ball at their feet, ensuring that the types of activities you're running are obviously as engaging as possible. Football Australia actually did release a MiniRoos kickoff session guide earlier this year, which does sort of provide an extensive amount of support for things like your physical literacy and that delivery, not just for MiniRoos kickoff, but it could sort of also be utilised for your standard club football sessions as well. So a common theme of these sessions in the guide and within MiniRoos kickoff in general is that natural social interaction between participants. That inclusive element obviously has shown potentially to lead to an increase in things like those confidence levels within children and social skills within children as well for those ages, which is obviously a huge selling point when we're looking at things like engaging parents and those that are looking at potentially a sport for their child. So lastly there, we also get to look at how it supports that transition into MiniRoos club football and what we sort of refer to back as the MiniRoos player pathway, which I will touch on a little bit more shortly. So moving on, we've looked at the product itself in a nutshell. So we can now look at how you as a club can benefit from MiniRoos kickoff or what it can do for you. So by design, the program itself is very flexible and it can cater to the needs of your club depending on the situation you're in. Now, when we look at the variables of the product, we're referring to things like the length of the program, the cost of participants, which I might touch on a little bit as it does differ, this one sort of on a club-by-club basis. But there are a couple of common approaches that clubs that do currently utilise kickoff do take. So the most common one being that standard utilisation of the program, in which I guess clubs attract new players, which ideally, you'll make a couple of dollars on the side that can hopefully then be reinvested back into the club. Others do use it as a cost-neutral exercise. This is maybe obviously a little bit less common, but it has proven to be very effective in maximising the amount of new faces into the club. And then there's that transition point for them down the track. There isn't necessarily a right or wrong way to approach this. Again, it is dependent on your club and your specific situation. The other interesting variable that I think I'd like to touch on is the when the program is run. So currently clubs have identified a few key ways as to how this is most effective and how to utilize the program in an effort to increase that capacity. The main one being its ability to be run in conjunction with your standard MiniRoos club football season, which, as sort of around that March, April through to September time of the year. So rather than detracting participants from club football, this is creating an opportunity for those that may be a little bit younger, thinking younger siblings, things like that, to experience what essentially a game day would be without that competitive element. Similarly, it can also be used for those participants who may already be of that desired age, maybe a little bit older, but haven't had that experience yet within club. They sort of, again, that softer entry point for them to get engaged that way. Alternatively, it can be a fantastic off-season participation drive, which a lot of clubs do currently use it for, the end of the year or the start of that next year, particularly through those initial months, where you can then quickly integrate interested participants into the club and then transition them straight into club football following their program. Now, as I mentioned earlier, MiniRoos Kickoff does have a large emphasis on that MiniRoos player pathway, in which that focus is on MiniRoos Kickoff as a starting point, where then participants develop an initial interest in the game, and then from there, that club creates the point for participants to transition into. We do have a video from a local club that we visited earlier this year that has shown how they've utilised MiniRoos Kickoff to better support their club.
So today we had the opportunity to get out to Bribie Island Tigers and check out their MiniRoos kickoff program, which was fantastic. Lots of smiles on the children's and the parents' faces. I think it's just a great opportunity for the children to have that initial interaction into what football is like. Bribie Island have led by example over the last few years, so it was fantastic to actually get out and see the people that keep the motor running behind the scenes and all the fun that the children are having out in sessions as well.
Look at that, all by yourself.
This is a perfect example of the MiniRoos player pathway where the focus is heavily on that transition from local programs into a MiniRoos kickoff program in a club and then transition them into club football. So it's fantastic and they've done a great job here tonight and over the last few years, so kudos to them.
I think ultimately we just want them to progress into club football. So this is a little sample to see if they like it. It's these kids' first introduction into football, but it's also their first introduction to a lot of sport. The parents are encouraged to get involved. At that age group, sometimes they can lose focus, so mum and dad can hold their hands and walk along next to them and just get them there having a good time. It really is a family thing.
Bribie and Jacob have done a fantastic job of creating this environment for the children. It's really welcoming and they've shown in that transition of participants into club football that they've created that environment and that culture within the club.
Brilliant. So just before I pass over to Kate, I think it is important to note how then you'll be supported by running a MiniRoos kickoff program, both from Football Queensland and Football Australia. So just conscious of time, I won't dive into too much detail here. So should you be after any more information, feel free to pop a question in the chat, as Steve mentioned earlier, or feel free to contact me directly following the webinar. But essentially, we are able to provide support with things like your administration and the registration system. Creating marketing collateral to support with the promotion of your program. We do have a casual workforce throughout the state as well that we can potentially rely on should you lack coaches or similar resources to deliver sessions. We do also provide clubs with equipment in the form of delivery kit, as you can see there, to further support in that delivery element. And in conjunction with the national sponsors there are also opportunities there for local partnership with the clubs. So I'll pass back over now, but should you have, as I just said, should you have any questions on the back of the webinar, feel free to reach out to me directly via the contact info at the bottom of the slide there. And I believe they'll probably be sent out on the back of this as well. But yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it, and hopefully we'll get to chat to you all very soon.
Great stuff, Zach. I must admit that I got goosebumps when I watched that video for the first time. Those kids are so cute. I remember my son, who's now of high school age, starting out playing soccer in the MiniRoos program and in the small-sided football program, rather. And I remember just seeing these little kids who were, like adults that had been popped in a microwave and shrunk down and put in football outfits. And it's so fantastic to see the smiles on the kids who, are trying something new for the first time and really getting to enjoy something different. So yeah, and as a local person, I know the great work that Bribie do across the spectrum of football. So good on them. And it brings me great pleasure now to take us right back to the start of this presentation of Kate's and introduce you to Kate Lawson, who is the manager of participation for women and girls with Football Queensland. G'day, Kate. Take it away.
Thanks, Steve. Hi, everyone. Right from the start, I'm going to say that the ums and ahs are going to be a lot more than Zach's. He's done a great job there, so tough act to follow. But really looking forward to having a chat with you all today. Obviously, the women and girls space is a very big one. So just going to touch on a couple of sort of key points that I thought might be relevant to you guys today. So we'll have a bit of a chat about come and try gala events, a bit of an outline, benefits for you guys and the support that we can provide here at Football Queensland. I will also touch on the Girls United social football programs that we have started to kick off around the state. Again, looking at a brief outline, the benefits for you guys and the support that we can provide from our end. And I did just want to slip in a quick chat about leadership and representation at clubs and I guess some strategies for recruitment in your board and committee, as well as from a coaching point of view. There's not really enough time to do a deep dive into it, but I guess just some points to think about and chat about today is what I'll go over. So we'll start with the Come and Try Gala events. They are always an interesting one. Sorry, Steve, I'll do a thanks, Steve. Can I go to the next slide? Thank you, because they're my talking points as well. So for the Come and Try Gala events, yeah, as I said, it's an interesting one. I often see them advertised. You know, obviously it's something that clubs do already utilize, and they can be really effective, but there's some key things around them that make them effective, and sort of certain things that I'd advise against as well. Sometimes I do see Come and Try days being advertised. I'd personally recommend doing Come and Try Gala events where you're looking at a 1 or 2 hour session maximum, to really just give your participants a taste of the game. Often a full day is something that's really hard to fill out with lots of different activities. It can drag on a little bit and tend to be potentially off-putting for someone that's brand new to the game, that's going to end up spending hours and hours running around. So a really quick taster, a 1 to 2 hour session, maybe throw in a barbecue at the end or something like that, or a barbecue for the parents while the kids are playing. Yeah, but just keeping it nice and short and sweet. And again, it can be tailored to suit any age group or demographic that you're wanting to target and recruit more participants to your club. So a Come and Try Gala event for your MiniRoos age group might look different to what you do for adults. If you're looking to potentially get more City League or Metro teams at your club, that might be more sort of social based, and a barbecue for the participants beforehand, and then maybe a little kick around afterwards. But yeah, there's sort of different ways that you can do it. What I would recommend for your Come and Try Gala events, and really most social football programs for women that are new to the game, is to use the Gamesology framework. So Zach mentioned the MiniRoos kickoff guide that Football Australia released. Obviously, it's tailored to MiniRoos, but no matter what age group you're targeting for, if you're looking at new players, they're going to be in the discovery phase. And so using the Gamesology framework and keeping things really fun and light and social and low key is going to be a really great way of hooking women and girls into the game through that sort of inclusive and fun style of sessions. Your Come and Try Gala events should always be free. I understand that there is a big burden on volunteers. I've been there myself before my role here. I do understand that that massive time commitment that you guys already put in, but a Come and Try Gala event, I would always recommend that it is a free program. Just again, getting that hook, that initial sort of connection with the players, just really helps if it is free, and people aren't sort of, I guess, feel like they're losing out if they don't enjoy it. One other key thing that I'll touch on is the sustainability of your gala event. So making sure that you're following up or thinking about the timing of your event. I guess looking at if your intention is to lead into the season and to get more players, more women and girls players for the start of the season, what are you doing in between your gala day and the start of the season? Can you run an introductory skills program in that time to give them an extra confidence boost and give them those skills and like, yeah, that bit of a taster again before they're committing to that full season? Just something in between to keep them engaged and make sure there's something going on. Unfortunately, if you run something in October or November at the end of the season with the intention of boosting your numbers for the following year, and there's not something to keep them involved in between, you might see sort of a dropout, and that hard work that you've done to put together an awesome event might go to a bit of a waste. Benefits for clubs, obviously, attracting new participants, and I think demonstrating your inclusivity and that you've got a welcoming environment at your club. It's a really good opportunity to show new people that is the case at your club. From a Football Queensland point of view, there's a number of things that we can do to provide support. In that handout section down the bottom, there is our Come and Try Gala toolkit. We are trying to get this out to as many people as possible. It's sort of a more elaborated version of the sort of quick ramble that I've done just now about sort of strategies and ways to implement them effectively. Within that, it also points to the marketing materials that Football Queensland can put together. When I was in Clubland, I had no idea that this was a thing, but Football Queensland will do your marketing for you in terms of creating graphics. There is a form that you can fill out where you put in all your details of your event, and we whip up, our amazing marketing team whip up the graphics that you need for that. Again, coming from someone that was in club and still is, I guess, in clubland, and working on Canva and having absolutely no skills in the sort of graphic design background, it's just a great way to sort of hand pass that off, and not have to have that burden on your volunteers to sort of do all your marketing strategy. So I highly recommend that one, for sure. And then staff support. I'm really keen to get out to as many clubs as possible between now and the start of next season and ongoing. So if you are hosting a Come and Try Gala event, please let us know so that if I am available and can come, that I can jump in, say hello. I think it's really important that your club is the one that's running these events, and that it's your coaches and volunteers that are the face of the event. But I'm more than happy to come down and say hello, meet you guys and have a chat. I'm also really happy to have a chat in the lead up to your event about strategies and ways to do it effectively. But yeah, so that's the Come and Try Gala events. And we'll jump now to the Girls United Social Football Program. So we piloted a program in Wide Bay, and when I say we, I had very little to do with it. It all sort of started just before I came on board. Fiona, who I did notice is in our chat, who has tuned in, was a huge part of the success of this program out in Wide Bay, and we're looking to continue to run these programs. So they are targeted at women and girls 16 and above, and looking at, I guess, players who are new to the game or players returning to the game, as well as trying to stop that dropout that we see at that 16 to 18 age group, by offering an alternative, is a word that I can use, but I won't rely on too much, but an alternative option to competitive club football. So it's that fun, low-key, inclusive environment. It's a 1-hour session with a bit of a warm-up, some skills, and then small-sided games. Again, looking at that gamesology framework. You know, even though those games are targeted towards MiniRoos, they're so effective for women and girls who just want that low-key sort of environment. When I say an alternative to club football, I don't want to say that it can also be a recruitment strategy. It can also be a transition from that social program into, for example, a city league program, or a metro program, I think is the language we're changing to. So it may be an alternative for people who aren't able to make that time commitment, which we often see with our mums and things like that. So it can be an alternative program that you can run instead of running or instead of having those participants in your city leagues. But it's also a really great way of getting people in, hooking them in, getting them enjoying their football, and then going, hey, if you've really enjoyed this and you want that next step, you can train once a week and play on the weekends, and they'll just feel a little bit more confident moving into that environment. Benefits for you guys, again, you know, obviously a recruitment tool, but and recruiting sort of volunteers and coaches as well, because we're looking at that older age group. So you might find that through getting these participants into play, you might get some volunteers and coaches as well. But that community engagement and that engagement with your members, and potentially the mums at your club that might otherwise not feel super engaged, and providing them with an opportunity to get involved, I think is really important. From a support point of view, from our point of view, again, we've got a toolkit that we can send you, that again is a more elaborated version than what I've spoken about tonight, and includes sort of the sign up process through Play Football, marketing strategies and things like that. Again, leaning on Football Queensland for your marketing is a great way to do things. We can also run the program for you. So we're happy to utilize our casual coaching staff, myself, to come to your club, and you can host it, and our staff can run the program for you. So that's also an option. There's a very, very quick version of that, but that's the Girls United Social Football Program. Again, leadership and representation. I'll try and do this one relatively quickly as well. I'm conscious of time and I don't want to, take away from Alan's time. But I think I'm a big believer in order to boost our participation numbers, we need to focus heavily on our really young players, so that if we've got more young players, we see less dropout as they get older. But we also need that top-down approach where we see more women and girls in leadership positions and in mentoring positions, in coaching positions, and when we see that, we're going to see an increase in participation numbers as well. From a committee and board point of view, I guess it's always important to reflect on the diversity of your board, not only from a gender point of view, but from what different assets and skills people are bringing. It is really important, I think, that we do see more women in these leadership positions on committees and boards. And a way to do that is to be really transparent that that's something that your club wants. Making a call out to your members and say, hey, we recognize that it's a bit of a men's club at the moment and we don't want it to be. And rather than sort of taking the approach, well, we haven't got women coming to us saying that they want to be on the board, be proactive in saying that you want them to come to you. You know, it can be just at that minor sort of, I guess, invitation for someone who might be sort of lingering in the background to go, oh, okay, this is an option for me. I guess as well, surveying your members to find out what their jobs are or what their skills are. You might have a bunch of mums at the club that may not have a football background, but that might be accountants or lawyers or teachers and have really, really important skills that they can bring to your committee or board. So that's also a good way to get some people in. From a coaching point of view, again, being really transparent that you want to see women in these positions. Football Queensland, we can come and run coaching courses for you. We can provide support in that area. It might be something that you look at for your under 6 age groups, for example, in terms of doing a MiniRoos coaching course for all of your parents so that they all feel as though it's something that they are capable of. I had a thought the other day about our under 6 to under 8 coaches that we see and the process in terms of selecting those coaches. And obviously it would vary from club to club. In my experience, what I've seen is that sort of muster day approach where you've got you put into your teams and then the parents go off and they discuss who's going to be the coach, and then they come back and they tell the club, all right, Glenn's going to be the coach. And that discussion often looks like, oh, well, I played a bit of footy, or, you know, oh yeah, I played soccer growing up. And then, you know, then they'll talk about the managers and all the heads turn to the mums. And I think it's really important that we remember that in these under 6 to under 8 age groups, we already have men coaching in those areas that don't necessarily have a football background, but potentially feel as though that they have the confidence or that they could transfer some skills across to be able to adapt and coach in those areas. I think it's really important that we remind parents in these age groups that it isn't about the explicit teaching of skills, and therefore you don't really need to know a lot about football in order to coach under 6s and under 6s to under 8s. It's more about providing that safe, fun, inclusive environment, that gamesology framework where there's lots of resources available to use. And potentially, arguably, mums might be better suited to doing that sort of style of coaching. And I guess it's something that you could look at, again, being transparent that you want to see more women in these positions. And, you know, you might say, you know, this year our under 6s, we've got 14 teams. We want to see half of those coached by mums. So I guess it's just something to think on in terms of how you go about that process with your younger, like with your parents coaching younger teams, and if you can sort of frame it in a different way to make it more appealing and make it seem achievable to a different audience. I think, is that me? I think that's me. That's me done. I'm sorry for all the ums. I'm sorry for all the rambling. If you do have any questions, or if there's anything you want to know more about, if there's any way I can provide support with your women's and girls programs, no matter what point you are at in that journey, please feel free to get in touch. I'm more than happy to have a chat. I'm also more than happy to hear your thoughts and ideas on how we can move forward. I think it's a really collaborative process and something that we all need to team up on in terms of striving for that 50-50 goal down the track. So yeah, please reach out if you want to. Thanks.
Good on you, Kate. Awesome stuff. Really quickly, this is great being in control of the system, because while you all have to wait to have your questions asked at the end, I can jump in and make comments. A couple of things that came to mind, Kate. Firstly, the push from non-traditional, male-dominated sports, including to an extent football, but also AFL, rugby, and the likes, means that we're in a really competitive space now with women and girls, and that presents to me a huge opportunity for football, because we've got more girls looking at being involved in physical activity, including all the codes of football. So it creates a target market that we can, as clubs, far better tap into now. So that's a really exciting prospect. The other thing is governance. It was so great to hear you touch on that and the coaching side of things. And yes, you're so right that the dads are turned to for the coaching and the mums are turned to for the management roles. And it's awesome to see some disruption in that in those kind of common perceptions. And we certainly couldn't agree more. It's great when we get to work with a committee or board of a football club and there's a female president or a female in a key leadership role in the club. It's fantastic to see. There's not enough of it. So yeah, I couldn't agree more strongly that that there's a need to advocate for that. So yeah, awesome stuff, Kate. Thank you very, very much.
Cheers. Thanks, Steve.
All right. And that gives me now the great pleasure of introducing you to Alan. Sorry, I'm trying to launch your video there, Alan, rather than your presentation. So let me jump back to the presentation and I'll hand over to Alan Templeton, the Officer for Walking Football at Football Queensland. Take it away, Alan.
Thank you very much, Steve, and thank you, Kate and Zach, for those great approaches to their particular format. It was really well presented, and now you leave me to do my bit. Guys, the question I get asked the most is, what is walking football? And I guess we look at it that walking football, it's a unique and sustainable version of the game we know, as in the world game, and it's a slower version of football that we're used to, and of course it's played on a smaller field, and it's crucial that we play it in a safe, social and fun environment, and it's designed also for former and new players alike to provide a safe, inclusive, enjoyable form of football to increase older Australians' participation in regular physical activity, which is crucial. When I think of the 4 years that I've been involved with walking football, we've seen a lot of great stories come out of players that haven't played football for 40, 50 years, and they haven't even been physically active. But after 3 months involved with walking football, you find that these players are they've changed completely. It's a life-changing thing for them not to have been active for so long, and then they see something like walking football that comes along, and the great benefits that come with it, and them getting to be social again, and just the physical activity provides opportunities for them to continue their involvement at a local club. We have a video that's an intro as well to walking football. So we'll just run through that, guys, and then we'll have a bit more to talk about how it can be beneficial to your club. I think just watching that video sort of tells us a lot about what walking football is about, and from I keep coming back to a personal point of view, but playing walking football is something most people in my age group had not considered. They finished playing probably 20, 30 years ago, and they thought that was it. That were on the scrap heap as far as, and put a nail through the boots too. But walking football enables them to re-engage back socially with old friends, make new friends, and for being involved in a club environment, it increases membership for those clubs. It brings in volunteers, and it's an opportunity to host events and gala days for interacting clubs. and also generates intergenerational relationships within the club in an old family affair, which we've seen on a few occasions where we've had dad playing, he's in his 50s, his father's played, and he's in his 70s, and also another lad, the son, he's only 30. So it encourages that great aspect that you see families getting out and being active together. It also, sorry about the hums, but it's also an opportunity for clubs to look for grants and funding opportunities that will see them. Could I have the next slide, please, Steve? Thanks, mate. And just getting back to the grants, there's opportunities with Walking Football to sort of to get a grant, or likewise funding opportunities for your club. And also, how does your club get started? Well, firstly, you'd give me a call and I would be more than happy to come out and visit your club and check out the proposed playing surface. From there, we would lock in a come and try gala day event as at your location, and also we would be advertising that for you over the few weeks in the lead up to the event. We would take control of the first session, of course, and obviously we will supply all resources, whether it be the hub kit, which, as it says there, includes balls, bibs, markers. So there's no expense for clubs from the start. And FQ would facilitate the program until the club is able to appoint a facilitator. As Kate and Zach mentioned before, we do have casual coaches that can come out and still assist you guys in getting the game up and going. I didn't say up and running because I try to avoid that word, but yes. And basically, we're happy to get you going and make sure that everything is played under the rules of the game. Very important that we do that from the start. That a lot of people think, well, we're just mucking about or we're just being social. However, it's important that we stick to the rules and regulations that come with Walking Football, which we're more than happy to pass on to you guys. And after this, it's crucial for the safety of the players that we stick to those guidelines and rules, and that's where we try and educate and the facilitators and would-be referees to come along and referee at your session. That not only allows players to understand the rules more, but also it keeps it down to a safety margin as well, which is crucial as far as Walking Football is concerned, with the older Australians getting involved with it. And so if we were to come along and do a session, obviously the field size is determined by the amount of participants, and also the sessions go between 10 and 15 minutes. We always try and drag out the breaks, 5-10 minutes, where everyone sort of engages with each other. They haven't met each other before, and it's I think it's an important part of that you have a good break where they can all have a chat, and also you run the session to what you feel the players are capable of achieving on the day. We've said before, there can be different formats, 4v4 up to 6v6. I've even seen 7v7 in some cases. And the pitch size can vary with each format. Games can be played on AstroTurf, grass or indoor surfaces. Flat level surfaces are recommended for obvious reasons, for safety. And we do make sure that we do warm-ups pre-game and warm downs to assist with the recovery process, which is most important for obviously a lot of elderly, older Australians that haven't participated in sport before. So if we can just flick on to the next slide there from me, Steve. This is what we've got existing clubs-wise, and we're really happy with where we are at the moment with where clubs, the amount of clubs, the amount of players. Outside of this, we've also probably got other clubs involved that want to come under the same banner as and be affiliated to FQ. And we've got just as many as what we see here, numbers-wise, from three different associations. So that hopefully we'll get them aligned to Football Queensland by the end of this year, and that will double our participants' numbers. And we're really excited once that happens that everyone will be on board, and it will be a straight passage forward to developing walking football even more so from a state level right through to national. A lot of people will think, well, what does our club get from having walking football? As I may have touched on before, there are a lot of great points that walking footballers can offer a club environment, and like I say, volunteers as a facilitator, and they may even become a good member, good club committee member, someone to rely on, and it brings people more together. And if you have, thanks very much for listening in, and I do gibber on a bit, so apologies for that. But if you want to have walking football at your club, then please feel free to contact myself on the email address, or even give me a call, and I'll be more than happy to come along and explain even more about how walking football would be a great asset to your club. Thanks, guys.
Good on you, Alan. Thank you very much. It was
Thanks, Dave.
fascinating to get some more insight into walking football, and absolutely one of those demographics that traditionally has not been well catered for in any of the football codes. So, yeah, seeing some great things happening around the place. And as we connected last week, I was saying to Alan that Chris from our team has been doing a bit of work with some bowls clubs that are in various stages of converting one of their bowling greens to walking football fields. So it's great that, the uptake is there. And I expect a pending explosion of participation in walking football. So, and just to reiterate how fantastic it is that Football Queensland, Alan, are able to provide resources to clubs that are looking to get things up and running, both in the walking football space as well as women and girls and MiniRoos. It's great stuff. Okay, now what we'll do is we might go through in order. Fiona made a great comment in the chat quite early on in the discussion that she often, I think the participants that sign on to things like the Girls United want an email to say when and how to pay for the Girls United courses. I think that way they know it is all going forward. I'm guessing that may just be a bit of an early in the process teething problem. Kate, have you got anything you'd like to jump in and add on that?
Yeah, I think we're sort of heading towards getting everything into Play Football so that it's nice and streamlined. It's a simple process. We get everyone's data collected that way as well, which is always good from a stats point of view. And yeah, it sort of streamlines that payment process, obviously, because it's all in the one system. To be fair, I don't know, Fiona, how you guys did it in Wide Bay for that recent event. So it might have been like a Microsoft Forms. I'm doing that for one on Wednesday night. It is a free program, but there's a Wednesday night one where we have done it in Microsoft Forms. So I guess my next next step is going to be making sure that we've got a process in place to get everything in that play football system and streamline that, I guess, to keep it all consistent.
Excellent. Good stuff. Thanks, Kate. Another comment from Fiona in relation to boys looking for Boys United programs rather than the competitive environment. And certainly that mirrors that comment I made earlier about a desire, a trend away from formal competition towards more social engagement. So very welcome to jump in and make some comments on that. Boys being jealous, how good's that?
Well, I guess, my title is Women and Girls, so I could hand pass this off to someone else, but no, I will answer it. I guess the whole reason behind the social programs for women and girls, and I guess the focus on creating these alternative and transition programs is that in the boys setup and because of the nature of the participation numbers in the boys space, there's much more diversity in the ability levels that we see, and I guess the varied opportunities. I know in the metro zones, I guess in that MiniRoos age group that Zach was talking about, we've got the Gecko, Komodo, the Goannas sort of streamlining of those sort of age groups, so there is those opportunities to change it up and make it more social. Likewise in the men's space, you've got city leagues all the way to 7 in Brizzy. In the regions, potentially it might be something that we need to look at because the numbers might not be as big out there. So that's definitely one I can chat to Dan about. I can throw him under the bus there to deal with that inquiry. But I think Steve's right in the sense that sport has always been, such a huge part of Australian culture, and there is that really competitive side of it. But I think more people are reaching out for that social aspect, and continuing to create those varied options is going to be important for everybody, not just women and girls. And I see a comment there, anyone united for our more fluid community as well. Definitely something that I'm sort of chatting about with the staff and working out how we can approach it in the best way possible. We don't want to be alienating certain groups. I'm personally starting to try and steer away from using the word female football, the words female football. I know that it's great alliteration for Female Football Week, but I do feel like it alienates anyone that does identify as a girl or a woman that may not be of that particular sex, but does identify, from a gender point of view. It's a really tricky space to navigate, and I think we're all still on that learning journey, and we really want the feedback from the community in terms of what is best and how we can best cater for everybody. I don't think there's a right answer. I think we do need to work with everyone to work out the best way forward. But yes, definitely need to look at those things.
Yeah, really good points, Fiona. Thank you. And thanks very much for those responses, Kate. I can see that Alan's just popped a response in there to Fiona's other question in relation to consideration of a walking football event to run alongside the Sunny Coast Masters event on the weekend, or a gala event to promote it. Alan, do you want to say anything further to that response there, which is a great one, I think? Oh, you've got your little cross through the mic still. There we go. Now we can hear you.
Yes, for sure, Steve. We're always very keen to host any come and tries, do demo games, wherever clubs feel we can fit into whatever they're organising on the day. And we did go up to Budrum a couple of years back, just when I first started with Football Queensland, and we held a demo game at half time of the final there, I think it was, and but there hasn't been any follow up since that. Bob Smoothie up that way, he does a great job organising up that way, and I'm sure he'd be more than happy to have us back again to play. I'm sure he's got some potential walking footballers up that way that would gladly sort of come and join us after that. Yeah, hands up, Steve. We're all for any suggestions as to where we can fit in, and happy to fit in anywhere.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm certainly
just to give the game greater exposure and promote it even more.
Yeah, I'm certainly hearing that message loud and clear in this support that Football Queensland is making available to clubs. So certainly, great to see. We just had another comment come in from Greg. Women in Football Week, could clubs be advised as early as possible the dates? As the last few years, there's only been short notice at the start of the season, so very hard to focus on that initiative with the start of the season and sign on, etc. So good point, Greg. Thanks for raising that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that. I love that change to Women in Football Week already. I'm starting the trend. I don't think Football Australia will be too happy with me though. No, I have spoken to Football Australia about it. They are going ahead with the dates. I believe line up with is it Women's Week in general, like the general week that celebrates women, which I believe is in March. So I think it's been consistently in that week, and I've had discussions with them about potentially, yes, thank you, Fiona. I have had discussions with them about that potentially being a week where we use it as a bit of a recruitment tool, or as sort of acknowledging the champions of women's football in that week, and then doing another week down the track, because I think, as you mentioned, it lines up at the start of the season and sign on, and it can be really tricky to do activations at the same time. So whether we look at changing the focus of it to be a bit of a celebration, and then we look at doing activations down the track at another point. But they have confirmed that it will be in that same week in March as it has previously been. I'm not sure of the exact dates, but I will find that for you and potentially flick it through.
Excellent. Thank you, Greg. Great comment. And thanks for the response, Kate. Righto, I'm conscious of time. So we might leave the session running for a few moments after we finish the broadcast. So any other questions that come in, feel free to pop those in the chat or in the question field. And we'll make sure that we get a response to you over the coming days, or pass the question on to the respective person who's been here presenting tonight. So a huge thanks to our presenters tonight, Zach, Kate and Alan. Thank you all for joining us tonight and throughout this year's Club Support Hub webinar series, which has been provided in partnership between Football Queensland and us here at CPR Group. It's been awesome to have so many club personnel involved in the sessions, taking control of their own futures. To Zach, Kate and Alan, awesome work. It was really informative to hear from you, and thanks very much for making yourselves available tonight. If anyone's missed any of the previous webinars, jump on to that little link down the bottom of your screen there, cprgroup.com.au/FQ webinars 2021. And you can download resources from all of the sessions, including tonight's, and access the video recordings and share those with others in your committee and so on. If you're not connected on social media with Football Australia and Football Queensland, as well as us here at CPR Group, feel free to do so. That's the way of the future. For more guidance on running a successful club, obviously head to Football Queensland's Club Support Hub. Also, feel free to sign up for the CPR Group newsletter at the bottom of our homepage. You can check out our podcast, Basket Case Clubs, where Michael and I and other members of our team invariably get an opportunity to stand on a soapbox and rant and rave. And of course, you can give us a good old-fashioned phone call. Our number's 1-800-100-204. So thanks very much, Zach. Thanks for joining us. Good on you. Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Kate. Very much appreciate your time. And thank you, Courtney. You might, if you're still there, want to pop on and say a quick good night to everybody as well. I apologise I haven't thrown to you to give you a chance to say hello.
Thank you, everyone. It was great listening to you all.
Good on you, everyone. Good night, and we'll look forward to seeing you online for next year's webinar series. Cheers.